Thank you for your interest in ChemADVISOR Expert Services. ChemADVISOR is a consulting company. Our employees are experts in the global chemical regulatory environment. As part of our services, we can bring this knowledge to support your own compliance efforts. If you have a need in the environmental, health, safety, and transportation considerations of chemical substances, ChemADVISOR can help you. I'm going to illustrate the ways we can help through examples. But if you need help, I strongly suggest you ask. Many of our services are provided for the first time in a unique situation. We're able to find a way to support a specific set of needs in a specific environment. We can bring our knowledge to help you in a variety of ways. So pick up the phone, give us a call, drop us an email, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your needs and the way ChemADVISOR can help. Now, we begin most consulting engagements by attempting to create a scope of work, a description of work that satisfies both ChemADVISOR and our clients. Now, you should be aware that for any consulting work, we always require the full disclosure of your product information to be able to give you the best results. Very often, we will need to get additional information about your business as well, your business structure, ownership, import amounts, sales amounts, a variety of things depending upon the nature of your question. We recognize that this information is certainly business sensitive, and as such, we are willing to enter into a non-disclosure agreement for the protection of your business information. We have a standard NDA that I can send you, or we'd be happy to review your preferred non-disclosure agreement. Now that said, we always consider our clients' information to be secret, and we do not share anything without your express permission. Now, in order to begin work on your project, we require an authorization to proceed, or ATP. We need that ATP to be in writing, although email is acceptable. At the time of ATP, you also need to provide any other documents that are required for your company. So, for example, if you need to have a PO in place for this work, you would need to provide that PO to us at the time you provide authorization to proceed, ATP. Now, in addition to our knowledge, we will use the various products that ChemADVISOR has developed over the years to support your efforts. These include the LOLI database, a collection of advisory and regulatory information on chemical substances, the Transportation Advisor database, a collection of transportation regulations by UN number, the ChemADVISOR Navigator, a description of chemical regulatory requirements by country, the OHS Pure Substance database, a collection of pre-written SDSs for 22,000 pure chemical substances, and EHS authoring tools, or EHSAT, which is ChemADVISOR's in-house preferred SDS authoring application. When you come to us with a consulting question, we can answer it on many different levels, from both a structural or a scoping type of question to a very standard set of deliverables. I'm going to talk about each of these in turn. I'd also like to remind the listeners that compliance is a business decision. Now, this doesn't mean you stack up the cost of compliance on one side and the cost of non-compliance on the other side and see which one costs less. Instead, I want to emphasize how much your compliance needs to be taken, your compliance actions need to be taken in the context of your business goals, your business environment. There are certain questions that cannot be answered by regulatory considerations alone. Where you want to go with your business and where you want to make investments are something outside the scope of what a consultant can offer. However, we can help you understand what the consequences of those decisions might look like. You also need to keep in mind that, there are costs associated with both compliance and non-compliance in the marketplace, and something beyond just the possibility of fines or the possibility of certain types of punishment. There's brand protection. There's being an industry thought leader. There are ways that you can use your compliance to really be a differentiator in the marketplace. And for those who really question that, I'd ask you to consider your vendors and think of those vendors who early and efficiently transferred to the GHS versus those who perhaps still haven't done it. Which of those do you see more value in? I think many of you would say those vendors providing GHS classifications for their substances are certainly superior, and that's one example in which compliance can really be a differentiator in the marketplace. So now I'm going to talk about some of the types of EHS&T consulting support. Market readiness has been very popular recently. Market readiness helps you understand the specific steps you need to take in order to comply with a jurisdiction. Now, those steps are going to be determined by a number of questions, including what are your products, what volumes are involved, and what are the specific identities of the countries that you wish to consider. This combination of business goals and business resources creates a matrix of requirements that is unique to every situation. So not everybody going into Europe or not everybody doing business in China is going to look at their regulatory requirements quite the same way, and they might not even apply in the same way. Instead, it's a matter of how you're configured and what your realities are that help define those requirements. Market readiness is almost always delivered as a written document. In discussing market readiness, we often bring into focus some considerations that a lot of times I'll see people gloss over. For example, what do you really mean by the term global? I think you can talk to just about any director of sales, vice president of sales in any company, and they will tell you that they do business everywhere. But in reality, there is a cost of doing business in every country. There is a set of chemical regulatory requirements, chemical control requirements that have to be met. And you have to help make the decision of, are you going to make the investment in order to support business in all those countries? Is that something you really think your time, effort, and money is worth? I'd also like to remind you of an idea in these discussions of standing. It's basically who holds the burden of compliance. And if you don't hold the burden of compliance, how can you legally be able to act? If you're a small manufacturer here in the United States and shipping to Europe, you may be familiar with the idea of standing. When you talk about REACH, it is the importer who matters. It's not the manufacturer if the manufacturer is located outside of the European Union. So the question really becomes, are you going to allow your importer to comply with REACH, or are you going to support your importer's activities in regards to REACH? That question of standing is important, and that question has significant costs associated with it in some cases. EHS Management Consulting helps you to understand how your resources fit your specific environmental, health, safety, and transportation goals, and perhaps gives you a way of evaluating whether or not your system is structured in a way that aligns with these goals. Do you have the resources? Are you on top of the information you need to know? Now, often in EHS management, I find that companies more or less operate in a vacuum. They may not know what other organizations are doing in the area of EHS management, and they have a hard time evaluating whether or not what they're doing is the right approach. So ChemADVISOR works with thousands of different EHS groups around the world, and we're able to bring that knowledge to your situation and help you understand, is what you're doing good? Is it really leading the industry? Or are there some places that we can see some fairly obvious areas for improvement? Now, when it comes to actually helping you with your compliance goals, we break that process up into at least 3 stages. This allows everyone to know where we're at along the roadway. It allows you to have an idea of what the costs are going to look like. and be able to identify where there may be unknowns or potential difficulties. So whenever we're working on a compliance plan, we break that project down into stages. First, we will define the scope of work, then we will create a compliance plan, and then we will assist you in executing the plan. Now, ChemADVISOR, with the help of your organization, can do the definition of the scope of work based on information you provide and create the compliance plan based on your resources and your regulatory situation. In some cases, we can help you execute the plan. In some cases, we can assist you with the execution, basically handhold your work, help you through a process. And in some cases, we would need to introduce you to third parties, say a testing lab or an in-country agent, to be able to actually execute the plan. Most countries with a functioning government have rules about the manufacture, import, transport, and sale of chemical substances in areas under their control. At ChemADVISOR, we call this group of requirements chemical control requirements. Now, every major economy has these, but they are different in every country or jurisdiction. There are places where this information connects, and some of it can certainly be reused, but you do need to look at each country on a case-by-case basis. Every country has its own form, it has its own ministries, it has its own bureaucracy that has to be understood and responded to in an appropriate way. But you do need to look at this environment while also understanding that the decisions you make in one market may influence decisions you make in other markets. An example of this would be chemical disclosures. Disclosing a substance in Europe may mean that it's effectively disclosed in the United States. So the individual countries have different chemical disclosure requirements, but your approach may affect your global disclosure environment. In a similar way, I think most of us know that GHS, the globally harmonized system, is neither global nor harmonized. So you have to consider what a GHS classification on a document might mean, especially if that GHS classification is traveling through multiple jurisdictions. If you're preparing a label that you want to use for Korea, Japan, and China, the potential of differing GHS classifications is going to be an important consideration, and you need to think about how you want to deal with those situations when they are different. Chemical control is the source of most of the expense when you're evaluating a new market. It's not the only thing that you need to consider, but chemical control is kind of the barrier to entry. It's the minimum step you have to make in order to do business. Chemical control very often doesn't care what your substance is. It doesn't care if your substance is hazardous. It only cares that you have a substance that's of interest to the chemical control regulation. So you always need to consider your chemical control requirements when you're looking at a jurisdiction. Here are some examples of chemical control. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but this should, I hope, give you an idea of what we mean when we're talking about chemical control requirements. Now, ChemADVISOR does have what we consider our standard consulting services. These are our bread and butter everyday activities. For SDS authoring, we write globally. We write in every region. We can write in any language that you would need. This is a place where your business goals matter. If you're going to do business in Slovakia, do you need a document in English, a document in Slovakian, or a document in all European languages? That's not a regulatory decision. That's a business decision. In the same way, some of the other considerations about disclosure or about GHS classification apply here. We also do label statements. We don't do artwork, but we do tell you what statements and what pictograms are required to be on a label for a product. For any of these, the SDS author of the label, we can assist with translations. We can also do these in any software environment. Now, our default is our own, EHS AT. And so if you don't specify or don't care, that's how we will create your document. But if you have a preferred environment, if you are running SAP EHS, or you're running the Works or Lisum or Formulator or some other software for creating SDSs, we can certainly author in those systems provided you can give us access. So we'd love to enter into that conversation with you. Now there's a whole suite of consulting services that I call really expert consulting services. These are those places where now you're talking about specific individuals who need to be involved. These are people who have spent careers developing a body of knowledge on very specific subjects. For most of these consulting services, if you asked me questions about them, I would say, hang on, let's get someone else on the line. This is where I need backup. I need really a subject matter expert to be with me to be able to intelligently discuss your proposal. I'm sorry, your needs and develop a proposal. One very common area of expert services is what we would call international transport, also known dangerous goods, also hazmat. Here's just a listed example of many of the regulations that we provide support for. This is in some ways part of our daily activity, since there is always a transportation classification on an SDS. But as you may be aware, there are many places where there are specialized needs. The product's got to go out the door, and it's got to get from your manufacturing site to the customer, and transportation is the set of considerations you need to make in order to do that. And depending upon your product, these can be serious considerations indeed. One of our lesser known expert services that I just want to highlight briefly is what we call import classification services. Basically, when you ship a product internationally, there's going to be a harmonized tariff schedule number. It's important for you to get this number correct, and you need to be aware that incorrect classifications, incorrect numbers, may be subject to penalties over time. Those penalties may also lead to greater scrutiny. But if you do this correctly, you may open up the opportunity for preferential treatment under a free trade agreement. Now, this information changes regularly, so it's not like it's a one-time inspection you can classify and forget. It's important to periodically review these and make sure that you're providing the proper tariff schedule number in your documentation, both for your protection from penalties and for your taking advantage of available free trade agreements. Now, all of our services are available on an emergency basis. They're not always available. This is on a first-come, first-served basis. If you need a document right now, you have a truck stopped at a border, you have a boat that can't be unloaded, we can basically drop everything and write you a document right now. This is usually done at a premium price. And as I said, this is depending upon availability. If we've already received a number of emergency calls, we can't always promise to be able to take yours. In addition to writing the documents in the emergency situation, we can help you after the fact determine where in your system the breakdown happened and help propose solutions so the emergency doesn't occur in the future. Now, the default way that most of our services are provided are either on an hourly basis or a per document basis. There are situations, however, where you may wish to consider what we call FTE support. FTE stands for full-time equivalent. And this is where you may need a ChemADVISOR expert for a long time to perform a specific set of functions. FTE situations may come about when you have employees suddenly leave, someone quits or becomes sick. You have a large body of work that needs to be done. For example, you have dozens of REACH dossiers to prepare, and rather than try to manage it on a dossier by dossier basis, just have us come in and help add to your muscle. You could also have a persistent work backlog. I've talked to plenty of companies who tell me they always seem to have the same 500 SDSs that they have to catch up on. If you wanted to bring that backlog down, FTE support may be the way to go. Finally, you may decide that just having somebody from the outside come in is going to make a better structure for your support of your EH&ST efforts. So now I've described our types of consulting services. Now I want to give you some specific examples where we have delivered consulting support in the past. One very common example is when you're entering a new market. A company has the opportunity to sell a new product line to a customer in the European Union. Well, we can help you identify the obligations under REACH based on substance identity and expected volumes. We can become your OR and set up your REACH IT account. We can obtain a letter of access and participate in CEF meetings. We can submit notifications and dossiers. And we can help monitor shipment volumes and communications. Entering a new market is really a good example of a chemical control type of requirement. You're in a new regulatory environment and you have to deal with a new set of regulations around the area of chemical control. ChemADVISOR can also provide our consulting services in support of your supply chain. You have a supplier who is shipping raw materials to your plant in California. We can help make sure that your new supplier is complying with the United States requirements. That includes looking at the TSCA status and providing a path forward for those not listed. We can write your SDSs in US format. Perhaps they only have SDSs available in an Asia Pacific format, or maybe only available in Vietnamese. So we can help you create those documents in a way that they are appropriate for the US market. We can help with data entry. So new supplier information can be entered into your environmental dashboard system or your purchasing system with the appropriate chemical information. We can determine the appropriate import class for this substance to see if perhaps a free trade agreement may help you reduce your tariffs. And we can evaluate the VOC consequences for these substances. It's not uncommon for a company to acquire a new product line or acquire a whole new business unit. And this acquisition process leads to an array of EHS&T responsibilities that you have to work your way through. In this area, we can audit the incoming information from the acquired products or the acquired business unit. We can determine the compliance consequences of the new products in your markets. Perhaps the acquired company was only doing business in North America, and now you want to take these product lines to Europe and to Asia. What do you have to do to make that possible? And frequently you'll have a problem that incorporates elements of both EHS&T and information technology about how do you bring together these two systems that previously existed under one framework, so you can continue to create new products, update your SDSs, generate the information you need to generate in support of your product lines. It's always interesting when a customer calls us because an employee has left suddenly. You usually have somebody very new to the organization looking at their EHS&T system with entirely new eyes and seeing things that perhaps need to be understood or explained. In the interim, we can often provide authoring services to make sure that your business flow isn't disrupted while the new employee is found and brought in. When the new employee is identified, we can help with the training to make sure that they understand what they need to understand about their regulatory responsibilities. And then those services can expand as needed into specific support for, say, REACH dossier preparation or compliance activities in Asia. In some cases, we can also serve as basically as a retainer to always be available to answer questions and provide consulting support on the go. Finally, your business relationships may be such that ChemADVISOR can provide a unique and helpful role in understanding and managing your regulatory requirements. Think of a case where you maybe have 2 or 3 different manufacturers who are sending their products to blenders, and then those blended products are now being sent on to different markets. Everybody here wants to keep their relevant, sensitive business information secret, but they still want to support their end customers and they want to meet their regulatory requirements. Well, in these cases, ChemADVISOR can sign non-disclosure agreements with all the parties involved, collect all the relevant information, assemble it, determine what the requirements are, and then help those organizations involved meet their requirements. In this way, your confidential business information is kept secret, but you still are able to meet your regulatory requirements in a meaningful way. I hope those examples have been useful for you. I hope they show that services can be customized to fit your specific needs and situations, and we have a flexibility in how we can structure our support. Different ways in the types of resources made available, in the number of resources, and the way those resources are paid for. We can look at both the big picture and in detail. And I really encourage you, if this was interesting, to just contact us and discuss your situation. We are happy to talk with you about what you're facing and discuss the ways in which ChemADVISOR's experts can provide assistance. I am located in our headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We also have offices in Brussels and in Singapore. You can feel free to contact any of these, whichever one is closest to you or most convenient for you to reach. Or if you're not sure who to contact, just drop a line to info@chemadvisor.com. We'd be happy to hear your story and put you in touch with the consultant best able to help you. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.